Huawei, former Google president, says Chinese company activities pose national security challenge. China is a challenge to national security and is involved in unacceptable activities, said Eric Schmidt, the former general manager of Google. He added in an interview with the BBC that the West should compete with Chinese technology instead of severing the relationship with it. Schmidt now heads the Pentagon's refurbishment board. Do you have a Huawei iPhone? This is what will happen to you. The United Kingdom is currently continuing cooperation with Huawei in the process of building a 5G mobile network, amid pressure it is under to stop cooperating with the company. There is no doubt that Huawei is involved in unacceptable practices affecting national security, Schmidt told BBC Radio 4. The company's activities can be described as a means of spying through the signals of communication networks, because the information that passes through Huawei routers ends up in the possession of entities that appear to be linked to the state, in some way. Huawei has repeatedly denied that it was a spy arm for the Chinese state, or that it was submitting customer data to the authorities. This is simply not true. Huawei is a private company, its employees are wholly owned and is independent of governments, including the Chinese government, Victor Zhang, director of Huawei in the UK, told the BBC. Huawei says it has nothing to do with the country's activities. Reuters. Huawei says it has nothing to do with the country's activities. Unjust to China. Eric Schmidt says the real problem with Huawei and the challenge it poses to the US government is that it is a Chinese company operating in the international arena and its products are better than those of its competitors. It is very important that we have options, and the response to Huawei is by way of competition to offer products that are similar in quality, he told BBC. Eric Schmidt spent a decade and a half as CEO of Google and its parent company, Alphabet. He admits that during his work in Silicon Valley over a long period, he misjudged the potential of China for renewal, and that he underestimated it during his work. He added that he believed that they copied the products well, and had excellent organizational capabilities for which they would ridicule a large number of workers, but he did not think they were able to offer something new. He says it is common for them to be highly skilled at stealing our accomplishments, but this unfair look should be reconsidered. To what extent are Huawei users dependent on Google applications? The Chinese are no less capable than the West, and they may be better in some areas of research and innovation, and they invest more money in it in a different way, the state directs in a different way from what happens in the West, and we have to be one hand to compete with China, says Schmidt. Schmidt denies that the model, investment, in technology directed by the state is more successful than the free market model, but he believes that the West needs to exploit its model to the maximum extent with the following steps. Invest more in research funding. Ensure that there is greater cooperation between the private sector, the state, and the academic sector. Opening doors to the best talent around the world. He says most would prefer to work in the West than in China. Schmidt was the director of Google. Getty Images. Schmidt was the director of Google. Catching up. Schmidt believes that one of the problems in the United States, specifically in Silicon Valley, is what he describes as historical blindness regarding the country's role in supporting research. He adds that everything that can be seen in Silicon Valley until the first order came from federal grants to support science. Schmidt had chaired the U.S. National Security Committee for Artificial Intelligence, and he says that Chinese progress is a concern that they are lagging behind the United States in a few years that does not reach 10 or even 5, and that there is evidence that China will catch up in the next few years, so what will happen? He adds that Chinese activity in quantum computation is at the same level as the West, and may be ahead of it. Schmidt believes that the separation of technology sectors in the United States and China is undesirable and will lead to the emergence of two different systems, and if they separate they will not meet again. He believed the United States was benefiting from a common platform, and expressed concern that separating the platforms would lead to less understanding. He believes that China will dominate whether or not the separation took place, and the question is whether they will work within international platforms or in their own platform. It is believed that separation carries many risks, and that it is in the interest of the West that its values be present in every technological platform. Sharp competition. Schmidt is cautious about choosing and supporting national heroes, but says there are weaknesses in the energies of the West, particularly in the absence of foundries for the manufacture of electronic chips. He believes that it is better for China to use chips from Western manufacturing than to manufacture them themselves. Schmidt believes that the escalation of the national spirit and economic protection policy in the world is a matter of great concern, and indicates that more than half of the startups in Silicon Valley are funded by people born outside the United States. Schmidt presents his conception of a strategy to confront China based on viewing the issue as intense competition, very intense, and should not interfere in competition by enacting laws.